right, 3 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. I was looking at the information for our next guest and just was so taken by it. I cannot wait to talk to her. She is Joan Halifax, and I think her title is Roshi, right? Roshi, yes. Or Zen Roshi. Joan Halifax, she's a PhD, Buddhist teacher, a Zen priest, an anthropologist, a pioneer in the field of end-of-life care, the founder, abbot, and head teacher of Upaya Institute and Zen Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Her book is called Standing at the Edge, Finding Freedom Where Fear and Courage Meet. If you're looking at the podcast right now, I do have a picture of the cover of the book, which is, by the way, a beautiful cover. But none of that is what made me intrigued by this interview. It's this sentence right here. Halifax has identified 5 psychological territories she calls edge states: altruism, empathy, integrity, respect, and engagement that epitomize strength of character. Yet, each of these states can also be the cause of personal and social suffering. Does that not make you wonder? You know, yes. Because how often do we want to be altruistic, right? Every good person does. Every good person wants to feel like they have empathy for their fellow man, right? Mm-hmm. Every good person wants to feel like they've demonstrated integrity and has shown respect for others and engaged in the lives of others to make them better and of the society as a whole. So that part is easy to understand. The hard part is how it can be a cause of personal and social suffering. Let's find out. Joan Halifax, good morning. Roshi Joan Halifax. Good morning, Joan.
Good morning. Very nice to meet you, Larry, and I'm very appreciative of being on your morning program.
Well, we are appreciative. You're going to share something with us that maybe we need to be thinking about. Where are you right now?
I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at Upaya Zen Center, which is the Zen Center and monastery that I live in and practice in and travel from, because I actually travel all over the world teaching.
Yeah, in the spiritual world, this might not be important, but in the material world, having a book as a top seller is important. and this book is really doing well, and it probably says something about our need for some spiritual awareness. Just to give you an example for the audience, it's number 15. This book is number 15 on Amazon in the category of Buddhism and Zen. That's pretty impressive. I mean, I'm sure there are millions of books that could be in that category, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad it's there. Actually, it's not officially published till the 1st of May.
Wow.
So this is all coming from pre-orders.
Wow.
People who are saying, I want this book as soon as possible. So that needless to say, makes me pretty happy.
So when I first heard the title Standing at the Edge, I thought maybe this was about us as humans when we're at the end of our lives. And I know you've worked with end-of-life care places, correct?
That's right, Larry. I've spent actually decades in the field of end-of-life care, among, various other things I've done. But it has working with dying people and also clinicians that serve dying people has been an incredibly deep education for me.
Did it change your religious beliefs? Are you a Buddhist because of your work, or vice versa? Did you do that work?
I actually became a Buddhist out of the civil rights and the anti-war movement in the 1960s, and not so much for religious reasons. It was that the Buddhist perspective was so practical, so pragmatic.
And it explains things? I'm asking it, I'm not saying it. I'm just wondering, does it explain some things that you don't feel are explained any other way any better?
It has an emphasis that is a bit different than conventional religions like Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And it is a deep emphasis on transforming our mind. And so meditation is a very key practice in Buddhism. It also has a strong emphasis on ethics. And that is really important.
Yeah.
Is there any differing between the neuroscientists and psychologists as to the why of something, because they seem to be totally opposite fields?
What seem to be totally opposite fields?
The scientists and the psychologists.
Well, no, I think psychologists much more observe human behavior, and the neuroscientist will look much more at what the brain is actually doing. And so, but many neuroscientists are very well educated in psychology, and many psychologists, wonderfully, have a deep understanding of neuroscience.
Oh,
but
nice.
From the point of view of neuroscience, and particularly contemplative neuroscience, or mapping the brain responses to certain intended mental states. For example, like focused attention or the cultivation of compassion.
I wanted to ask you something based on something that's probably common in almost every church, and that is to send people, what do they call them, Robin, when they send retreats, or like when you send somebody to Haiti to help out, or send
missionaries.
Missionaries, yes. The people who do the missionary work, it seems to me every single one of them has in their heart the best of interest. They just want to help out their fellow man. They visualize that the place they're going is just a very, very bad place, and they want to bring something good to those people. And that kind of fits into the categories of altruism, empathy. I would hope integrity and respect are part of it as well. And I'm sure they're engaging. So they're doing all of the things, or at least they are intending to do all of those things. Comment on that, if you would. And it doesn't have to be a missionary. It could be any of us who decide to go out and help out in a social setting, whether it's here or anywhere in the world.
Well, it might be fun, Larry, just to review some of the edge states that I talk about in the book, Standing at the Edge, because altruism is actually on the top of the list, and then empathy is next. But, altruism is selfless actions that are basically in service to others. Right. And that altruism is truly essential to the well-being of society and the natural world as well. And I don't think you and I would be probably alive if our parents hadn't been altruistic.
Right. Right. And if I've often thought this. I've thought that if we were all altruistic to the point of, always thinking for others, then we wouldn't need laws. If everyone was altruistic, we wouldn't have anybody who was. We wouldn't have to have taxes for welfare, right?
That's a great insight. I love that. That's so. Thank you very, very much for. I'm going to use that example. I give so many talks. That's just terrific. But when sometimes our seemingly altruistic acts actually rather badly harm us, and they can also harm those whom we serve, and they can even harm the institutions that we're serving in, or even harm whole nations, like, for example, Haiti. Or in some instances, the nation of Nepal has been harmed.
How? Explain how. How is it harmed?
It's basically, for example, we know what happened. The United Nations sent down all these helpers after the earthquake in Haiti. All these NGOs went down to Haiti, and many aspects of pathological altruism unfolded there. From people becoming sick from the UN peacekeepers who were down there, to really disabling the initiative of local peoples by NGOs taking over, for example, construction of houses, but not involving local peoples.
Oh, okay. Gee. So
that would be considered pathological altruism.
Okay, but okay. Wow. Let me just don't go anywhere else. I want to make sure I understand this. We're not going to a commercial. Okay. All right. I thought this before about being a parent. All right. Here's my little example. I never wanted to spank my son. Never, ever. When he was a baby. He's 31 now, so I don't spank him anymore. But I think I only had to swat him on the butt one time. I hated it, and I wanted him to love me, but I knew at that moment he probably didn't. And I thought, you know what? It's because I love you that I did that. So is it the same thing as, what I heard one time is that if you help a chick out of the egg, instead of letting it break through the egg by itself, that it will die because the motion of pecking at the inside of the shell strengthens the neck, so that it can eat once it gets out of the shell. And if we open it up, then it dies. Is it the same thing where you're trying to do the good thing, but you're actually hurting? And maybe we need to learn how to be better as altruists, if that's a word.
You know, both of these are terrific examples. And it reminded me also, Larry, of I was in Costa Rica last year, and I observed turtles hatching on the beach. And a Tico, a wonderful Costa Rican fellow, said to me, don't help the baby turtles. Their struggle to get to the ocean is what makes it possible for them to survive in the ocean. So you see these little tiny turtles just struggling and making their way toward the water's edge, and you want to pick them up and give them a free ride, and that actually is not good for them. So these are wonderful examples, the turtle example or the chick example. I'm not sure about the spanking example, but anyway, spanking's not supposed to be too good for your kids.
Well, no, but I guess what I was trying to say is that if all you want to do is be, I don't know, just a good person, sometimes it's not good enough. So what is it with Haiti and the Dominican Republic? Why is one half of the island in such a bad shape and the other half is not doing so bad? I mean, why is one half better than the other half?
You know, I can't say, because I actually haven't been to Haiti or the Dominican Republic in decades, and I can't give you a good answer on that. So maybe you have some insight.
Well, no, I don't. But here's my thought. If we have a lady who comes in here on Tuesday, she'll be here tomorrow, and she went to Haiti. She's an eye doctor, okay?
Yeah.
And she went to Haiti to perform free cataract surgeries on as many people as they could in the course of a 3 or 4 day visit. They wouldn't have that, and by giving the vision to them that they didn't have, maybe some of those people could work, and maybe they couldn't work. You know what I mean? Their lives could be better.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing is that might be, cataract surgery, which is done all over Nepal, which changes people's lives. I can't say why Haiti would refuse that intervention. But, another approach would be to actually train eye doctors in Haiti so that they could perform the cataract surgery. So that's one of the issues that we look at in terms of pathological altruism.
So is it the teach a man to fish theory? Is that?
That's right. You got it. In fact, I use that very phrase in my book. Mm.
Oh, you talk about respect, and that is something that I think is we as a country are lacking that right now. Instead of tackling problems and working together, everybody has this "it's all about me" attitude, and they don't respect the opinions of others.
Yes, Rob. I actually have a big section on respect, and the counter, the opposite of respect, of course, is disrespect. And I wrote a lot about bullying, about what is called in the literature horizontal hostility, that is bullying among peers, and then vertical violence, which is top down or bottom up disrespect. And we, as you say, this practice of disparaging others is something that we see rampant in our culture today. I felt it was really important to explore deeply issues around respect and disrespect.
Yeah, I heard what you just said about it was being rampant. We had this discussion once about magic words, that they're not just something of fairy tales, that a parent who tells a child you can be anything you want to be is blessing him with these magic words. And a parent who tells a child you're never going to amount to anything has done the exact opposite, but still it's the magic of words.
Yes, it is the magic of words. And there's some pretty damaging magic going on out there, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. In other words, there's a kind of atmosphere of incivility, a sort of toxic swamp of disrespect that I think is having an extraordinarily negative influence on our young people.
Oh, yeah, and we probably have done it all along, not just to our children, but to other ethnicities. We probably did it to other nationalities. And I've often thought this, going back to my missionary statement, I mean, I think the missionaries have good intent, but I think sometimes when I look at the pictures of them, and please, everybody who's a missionary, forgive me, I don't mean this about everybody, but there's a certain feeling I get. I wonder if there's an arrogance. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do what they're doing, but it's just like, I'm great, I'm good, I'm here to bring you salvation and something. And I didn't mean that in a religious way, but I mean, we're going to show you how to, dig a ditch better than the way you do it now or something. And it seems a little arrogant, although I don't think it's intentional arrogance.
Well, that is part of pathological altruism, Larry. It's when the ego gets involved. And yet there are just extraordinary accounts of altruism, like, for example, Wesley Autry, who was the man on the subway platform who jumped into, the tracks of the subway to hold down a man who had a seizure. And he's actually in the military. He did it very spontaneously. His background was in the military. He did it very spontaneously because he was going to try to pull this guy out of the oncoming train, and he couldn't. So he just laid on top of the guy, held him down, and the train passed over the head, overhead, grazing his hat. And when he was hailed as a hero in New York, and it actually, globally, this story came out, people were completely amazed when he said, well, why are you bringing so much attention to me? Anybody would do that.
Wow. I wonder sometimes...
That's kind of unselfishness and selflessness.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that's a real hero.
Yeah.
And that is the strength of character that you talk about, because it's not about the self, it's about everybody else. Genuinely. Exactly right. And another area that I talk about in the book is empathy. I work with humanitarians and CEOs and educators and, of course, clinicians from all over the world. And one of the issues that gets brought to my attention is that people who are presencing the suffering of others become exhausted, become sick from that experience. And, it's really important that we're able to sense into the suffering of another person. Empathy brings us closer to one another. It inspires us to serve, and it also expands our understanding of the world. But if we take on too much of the suffering of another, and if we identify too intensely with it, we can be damaged and basically unable to act. So empathy is another very interesting edge state that I explore in the book. And that's where those internal chains come from, because you hear the phrase, you can't be free with a chain on you. Well, it's not a ring or belonging to a club or anything like that. It's something that comes from the inside of a person.
Right. Say more about that, what you're pointing to here.
Because, people, will have relationships. In high school, they'll go steady, they'll get engaged, they'll have to be joining this club to be accepted in college, things like that. But and some people will view that as being suppressing themselves, and then they blame that certain entity as being the chain. But if you accept that inwardly, that you are totally being suppressed by outside groups, it's not from the outside, it's from the inside. And you have to recognize the fact that you can't just follow the world, you have to be your own person.
That's interesting. Well, thanks for that perspective. And, empathy is this kind of experience where we're in physical or emotional or mental resonance with another. So that is a world without empathy, in a way, is a world where we're not alive to each other.
Do you know, in Central Florida here, where you're talking to, we have more than just Disney World. We have a lot of nursing homes, because a lot of people have retired here and then, got to the point where they needed help, and so consequently we have a lot of places that house people who are being helped, either assisted or complete skilled nursing. And I know that some of the people who are in there have a caregiver who is maybe a wife or a daughter or a son. And I'm wondering if maybe the practical application to what you're saying could be utilized by them.
Well, absolutely, because the issue with empathy is that too often we over-identify with the suffering of others. And so this really, it pertains, Larry, to your experience as a parent. It pertains to all people who are caregivers of any kind, from professional caregivers to family members. It pertains to educators and to politicians, that sometimes we over-identify. We don't distinguish self from other adequately. And as a result of that, we experience vicarious suffering and become exhausted. And this is called, actually, empathic over-arousal and empathic distress. This is what it's called in the literature.
Really?
The experience of empathic distress.
So we, oh my gosh, so what do you do? I mean, how can you say to your mother, for example, I'm going to walk away for a day or two? I mean, is that maybe the solution, to just get away a little bit?
Sometimes that's the wisest and most compassionate thing to do. Care of ourselves in the process of caring for others is really important. But it's fascinating, Larry, because compassion is different from empathy. It is an expression of, we'll begin a little bit at the beginning. Compassion is our capacity to actually attend to the suffering of another person, and then to feel concern, and then to act skillfully in relation to that other person to help alleviate the suffering. But empathy is that kind of resonance, the sort of taking on of the experience of another. So, in the case of empathy, we really want to be able to regulate our response. In the case of compassion, what neuroscience and social psychology has indicated, which is very fascinating, is that there's no downside to compassion. But compassion is not idiot compassion. And it's often mixed up with empathy.
I wonder if you could comment on another example. The example would be the college student who keeps writing home for money, and the parent who keeps sending it. Are they crippling both parties, themselves and their college-age child?
Well, I think that's a great example, actually, Larry, back to pathological altruism. And I use examples like that in the book. We could also call that kind of action both pathological altruism and or idiot compassion.
Wow, I wouldn't know what to do. I didn't. Thank goodness I wasn't forced to be in that position. Yeah. But I think if my son was asking for help, I would help him every time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can understand that. I'm sure you can too, Robin, and our audience can. But we also want our kids to individuate. We want them to be independent. We don't want to enable them into, a kind of character that is weak. So, I think you're citing terrific examples of exactly the fraught side, the difficult side of these edge states.
You're a smart lady. You're a wise lady. I mean, I really want to talk to you longer. Mm-hmm. I have to read the book. It is called, let me scroll up. You have so many reviews on your Amazon page. It's unbelievable. Standing at the Edge. Finding Freedom Where Fear and Courage Meet. Oh, I love that subtitle. Finding Freedom Where Fear and Courage Meet. Joan Halifax is the author. I have a copy of... No, I don't have a copy of the book, do I? No, I'm sorry. How do we get the book? I saw it on Amazon. Is there another... Do you have a website?
I personally have a website, but it's not my personal... Actually, it's not my personal website. But you can learn a lot about this from podcasts, videos. We just produced a short video about the book that's beautiful. You can see it on the website, and it's www.upaya.org.
It's just one of those things where I'm getting what you're saying, I think. I'm probably just a kindergartner on this subject, though. and I'm wondering the practical applications, and I guess I came up with a few amateur ones. The mom in the nursing home, the son in college, that kind of stuff. Or the missionary, I guess. I don't know. It sounds like this is a really deep topic that we only skim the surface of, Joan. Thank you for what you're doing with your life. I think you're making the world a better place. You're giving us the tools to make it a better place. And the book will help us out. Standing at the Edge. Joan Halifax. Thank you, Joan.
Been a pleasure, Robin and Larry. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, listeners.
And, that was nice. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Chris Foster.